Hello, friends. Hello, hello, hello. So, this is a continuation of my previous videos discussing domestic violence, and today I am going to speak about the personality traits of women tend that have a higher tendency to become victims of domestic violence. I don't want to call it psychological profile. I think personality traits is a better term. It's more appropriate. So I did make a previous video about the personality traits of men that tend to be abusers, that have the background and the psychological markers to become abusers of women. But there was one thing that I left out. I did mention that that they witness men who witness domestic violence at home, men that had low self esteem, codependent, untreated mental illnesses, drug or alcohol abuse, anger issues, were more prone to become abusive to women. But there was one thing that I did not mention very clearly, and is that children who witness domestic violence um, at home, male children, boys who witness domestic violence, do have a higher propensity to become violent themselves in adulthood, because they see their father doing it, so they think that's how a woman should be treated. And not to make excuses for men that grow up like that, but they think it's the norm. And if the mother doesn't do anything about it, doesn't leave, doesn't explain to him, to that child, that this is not how a woman should be treated, if he does not get any interventions, then he has a higher tendency to become the abuser. But let's discuss the personality traits of women that tend to end up being the victims. One, growing up at home, seeing her mom getting abused. This little girl's going to think that this is how a woman should be treated. And a lot of moms try to be strong in front of the child because she doesn't want to feel ashamed. She doesn't want to scare the child. So she'll say things like, "It's okay. It's okay. Dad is just angry. He had a tough day at work. He's just grumpy today. It's okay. He's just stressed out." And they make excuses for him. So that little girl's gonna grow up thinking, "Oh, okay, when men are stressed out or they have a drink or two, if I get slapped across the head, that's normal." And so growing up like that puts them in a position to be more accepting of that behavior as normal. Also, women that are in certain socioeconomic life, like lower income, lower education, sometimes they feel that despair, that they don't have anywhere to go, they don't have the money to leave, where things like, where am I going to go, how am I going to afford my life. Maybe they belong to a certain culture where divorce is prohibited by culture, by religious beliefs. So that puts them at a higher risk of becoming victims of domestic violence, because the society or the culture that they live in doesn't promote a woman leaving her house, because it empowers the man to beat the woman if he so chooses. And another one that I see quite often, and I think I was like that just a little bit, not too long, when I came to my senses. But that's one of the things that I went through, just trying so hard to just to be a pleaser, right? You want to do everything perfect. You take on so many responsibilities. You want to have everything perfect at home because he has a temper and you don't want to aggravate him. You don't want to give him any reasons to yell. And you don't want him losing his temper in front of the children. So you try so hard to be so perfect. You carry the emotional weight of the relationship. You tend to end up, with the man that's going to exploit that sense of responsibility, that sense of duty. I have to be a good wife. I have to do the right thing, which is not bad. Of course, you have to, you want to be a good wife and you want to do the right thing, but you may end up with somebody who wants to take advantage of that and exploit that because you're carrying so much. You're carrying the weight of the family on your shoulders. You apologize for things that you should not have apologized for. Have you heard, or met people that are always saying, "Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry." They're always apologizing, and sometimes you're like, "You didn't do anything." Those are people that, women that tend to always, that tend, not always, but that tend to have a higher risk of becoming victims of domestic violence. So when you see a woman that's constantly apologizing or taking so much responsibility, wanting to be the hero, wanting to be his hero, wanting to appease to him overly and overly trying to please him, that makes it that makes her a target, an easier target for an abuser to take advantage of her, you know? So find a partner who wants to bring something to the table, who sees those qualities in you and doesn't want to exploit them, but wants to protect it and wants to see the beauty in somebody who wants to make them happy. And of course the empath, right? The highly empathetic woman. And that was me. And that's just one of the beautiful traits of being, a woman, feminine, nurturing, loving. You're empathetic. Unfortunately, highly empathetic women are more likely to fall for someone who plays the victim. And a lot of narcissistic men or men that like to play, manipulating games on women, play victim. Oh, I was abused as a child. Oh, I didn't have a father. Oh, my mother didn't love me. They seek all that pity and empathy from a woman, and that woman just wants to be his hero, wants to be his healer, wants to be his nurse, his nurturer. And she's like, oh my gosh, he went through so much. That's why sometimes you see in the news when a woman has bruises all over her face, she'll sit there and says, "Oh, he had a rough childhood. He went through so much, and I just, I triggered him. It was my fault." They'll sit there and take the blame because they're so empathetic. They're so understanding of his trials and tribulations. They're so understanding of his pain and suffering, right? And the highly empathetic woman has a higher tendency to not stand up for herself. And when the abuser comes back with flowers and apologies and he's crying, I'm sorry. I never meant to do that. I love you more than anything. It's just, I'm struggling. I'm stressed out. You know, uh, my dad is in the hospital. They come up with all kind of excuses. And the empathetic woman is like, I'm so sorry. She's crying, I'm sorry. Her lips are busted, her nose is bleeding. No, no, it was my fault. I'm sorry. All of that stuff that they play on. So some of our greatest strength as women, being loving and nurturing and wanting to heal and wanting to be empathetic and sympathetic, those that want to manipulate it and exploit it, the abusers that want to manipulate those gifts that we have, it becomes also our greatest weakness. So the abusers know he can appeal to the empathy and compassion that you have as a woman. A man will study you, and he will study you for months, even before he asks you out on a date. Even while you're dating, he'll sit there and study you, your weaknesses, your trigger points, how soft and delicate you are, how caring you are. And he will play on that to the point where if he finds out that you're nurturing, that you're generous, that you're giving, you're the one volunteering and want to save the world, he'll play on that too. If he finds out that you're very empathetic and nurturing and forgiving and understanding, that will make that woman a high target for domestic abuse. And those are beautiful traits. Don't lose that. But I'm just saying be careful so that this person that you're nurturing, that you're loving, that you're being so empathetic with doesn't use that against you and exploit it. And of course, the peacemaker, the one who doesn't want to argue, doesn't want to fight, suppresses her feelings, puts her needs last, and that was me. Um, all of that to prevent fighting, to prevent from getting him mad. The peacemaker wants to avoid conflict, always needs his approval, doesn't want any, is afraid of disapproval, is afraid of discord, right? These are the women that often need acceptance, validation. And of course, what woman doesn't want to be validated and appreciated and doesn't want to hear kind words from her, from her man? It's nice to hear those things, and it's needed at times. But there's just some women that just have such a high need for that. And if they need something, they won't say anything because they don't want to be the nagging wife. And I went through that. I would keep quiet because if I said something, or if I, asked, when are you going to do the yard? It's been 3 weeks. It's really, the grass is super high back there. I'm scared to go in the backyard right now because, there might be snakes there. Or you're a nagging wife. Nobody likes a nagging wife, right? So now you have to keep quiet. You have to keep everything inside. You have to be the peacekeeper. You work so hard to keep the peace that you no longer talk about the things that are important to you. You work so hard to keep the peace that you give up on your art class, your music class, your hopes, goals, and dreams. You don't want to talk about going back to school and finishing that degree because it might upset him. It might make him feel like once you finish the degree, you're going to leave him. Or he'll say something like, my last woman left me. They'll play those psychological mind games to play on your nurturing characteristic, to play on that empath characteristics. Oh, the last woman left me. You're going to leave me too. And then, of course, because you're such an empath, such a loving woman, you're going to start crying and say, no, I'll never leave you. I'm going to be your hero. I'm going to stay. And that's how they get a lot of women to stay. They play on our kindness. And by no means am I saying to give up on those traits, because these are the traits that makes us feminine, that makes us women, that makes us the beautiful beings that we are. But what I'm saying is that when they see those characteristics, these are the type of women that have these characteristics higher than most of us, higher than other women, and that puts them at a higher risk to become victims of domestic violence, right? So no matter how hard you work to keep him happy, he can never be happy. He's always finding something to be upset about. So to be the peacekeeper, you keep giving an inch, giving another inch, giving up on things that matter to you. You don't complain. You don't talk about anything. It's like you start to lose your sense of self as a woman. You start to lose those things about yourself that he was attracted to in the first place. He met you at the gym, exercising, looking fit. Now you don't go to the gym anymore because it bothers him. He met you at, a social club or a gardening club or a community something. He met you at a dance class, and that's attractive. But now you don't go anymore. You don't do any of the things that you used to enjoy doing. So try not to lose your sense of self. Um, these are the type of personality traits that make a woman more, not always. This is not a always every time, but make a woman more susceptible to be a victim of domestic violence. Being overly responsible, thinking that is normal because you grew up in that type of environment. Being so empathetic, being a peacekeeper, putting yourself last each and every time to make him happy. So I'm going to pause here and then I'll pick it up on the next video. Thank you so much for listening.